Hello everyone and welcome back to a Nissan 370Z review. Now the eagle-eyed of you may notice a couple of small differences between this video and the last time a Z car appeared on the channel. First off, first time round I was in the south of England in freezing temperatures with about 6 inches of snow on the ground. Today we're in Nevada. Las Vegas is in the rearview mirror and it's currently about 90 degrees in foreign. In English money, we're well into the 30s, so very little danger of snow today. And the car is a Nismo version. Now, I'm no expert really on Nissans at all, to be fair, and certainly not on these. But the Nismo version is essentially the top trim level for the 370Z. It's very easy to spot a Nismo because it looks fairly different to the standard Z car. But unlike the GTR Nismo, this isn't a super comprehensive reworking of the car. Instead, it's a series of small but significant upgrades that are supposed to make this a much sportier car. The Z series, I think, has really always been one of those cars that everyone forgot the moment it came out. It was compared unfavorably with things like the Porsche Cayman, and of course, when you try and compare your car against anything from Porsche, generally you lose. And so people can never really quite work out what the 370Z was supposed to be. Is it supposed to be a sports car? Is it supposed to be a muscle car? Is it a GT car? What is it? Who knew? But the Nismo and its 370 and 350Z stablemates are now very, very good value for money on the second-hand market. And I was lucky enough that this car's owner, Stephen, is a fan of the channel and said to me if ever I happened to be in Vegas that I should have a go of his Nismo and see how it compares to the regular car and also to the Lotus cars that I've driven. Well, conveniently, I was out here in Vegas on a family holiday, and although I was intending to do no filming whatsoever while I was out here, well, I can't resist the opportunity to drive a nice car on some nice roads. And as roads and scenery goes, this is about as different from the usual stuff you'll see on the channel as we're ever likely to get. So I hope you enjoy it. For those of you that are interested, we're driving through a place called Red Rock Canyon. So cool because a lot of the rock over there is red. Very inventively named area. Now, first impressions of this, and first confessions I suppose as well. Because I drove the last Z car in such unfavourable conditions, it is really quite difficult to draw a direct comparison between the two. And there are certain things which, being on the wrong side of the car, I find a little harder to judge. For example, the gearbox. However, the box, which is a 6-speed manual, is an absolute delight. One thing which is actually kind of surprising and really making itself known in this car, even at these very modest speeds, is the amount of road noise present in the cabin. Now, that's going to be due largely to the way that this car is designed, because behind me you have no partition between the cabin and the boot, or the trunk, or whatever you want to call it. So all the road noise that's coming through those rear tyres is going to get transmitted straight through and into the shock towers, which kind of protrude into the boot area, and that makes for a relatively noisy cabin. Now, we've got the aircon on low in the interests of safety, but we were driving with the windows down earlier, and with the windows down you don't really notice it, but you put the windows up and it doesn't actually reduce the noise in here that much. The other thing which made itself very apparent the moment I got in this car, and I was driving it about half an hour ago, getting it out of where Steve lives, and he lives in a little community which has paved roads, and you look at them and they look like they're pretty level, but they're not. And at low speeds, this car's ride is very, very firm. So if you're living in the city, again, it's not actually a particularly comfy car. When you're out onto these kind of roads, though, it is a lot more tolerable. Now, I have requested a windy road, but in the state of Nevada they are at something of a premium. So I'm going to do my best to judge the car's handling. One thing which I'm really pleased about is the amount of feedback coming through the wheel. There's actually a really nice texture, and there's a constant stream of information coming through the helm. The wheel itself is actually not too badly sized, and it's nice and thinly rimmed, so points to Nissan for getting that right. It's something you'll know I criticise in a lot of my videos. One thing I'm not so keen on in this car are the seats. There's nothing wrong with them at all, but in the current Nismo, and I believe previously offered as an option, were Recaro seats, which you'll have seen in everything, including the Series 1 Evoras. I think it's the Recaro CS, and they are just absolutely brilliant seats. They work well in nearly anything. I've even seen them, I think, in some Renaults. They appear in Fords. They get everywhere, these things, and they are absolutely brilliant, and they'd be a really, really worthy upgrade to have. Now, this car does have a warped disc at the minute, which is something that's going to be fixed, but the car does stop absolutely fine. Pretty much everything about this car is stock, so this is a reasonably unmodified example. There are plans to modify it in future, but I won't reveal those just yet. Suffice it to say, if the car does get modified in the way that Stephen intends, I'll definitely be doing my best to get it back on the channel, because it'll be quite something. And one of his reasons for buying this car is the fact that he is, and believe me, these people do exist in the United States, a die-hard fan of the manual gearbox. This is one reason things like a GTR didn't appeal. He wants a proper stick. And this is a nice one. This car does have automatic shifting, or downshifting and blipping, whatever. Now, the engine is a 3.7 litre V6, produces about 350 horsepower. It's a few more than the standard 370. Honestly, if you're going to buy an Nismo, don't do it for the engine. Despite that, by European standards, relatively large capacity, this is still no torque monster. You really do need to rev it to get the best out of it. Redline is about 7,500 RPM. The scenery around here is rather spectacular, honestly. The scenery on the inside of the car, i.e. the interior, is basic, but it works. I've been driving around a 2019 Camaro, and this is probably just as good, if not better. The car feels very well built for something that is now 7 years old and is typically Japanese in that respect. Really, you could see this as a continuation of the 1990s Japanese sports cars, where the interior was something that existed. They certainly didn't really pay any attention to making it that fancy, and you do have to remember that these are relatively cheap cars. If you're coming to Las Vegas and you want to rent a car, it seems very much the done thing. If you want to come to Vegas and be a fake baller, you go and hire a Lambo for, I don't know, a few hours or a half a day or something. Do me and everyone else a favor. Don't blast up and down the strip like a tit, because trust me, everyone standing outside Caesar's Palace has heard what a Huracan sounds like when it's standing still with some prick putting the throttle to the floor. We know, okay? Come out here. If you're going to get arrested for driving like a loon, get arrested for driving like a loon out here, because this is spectacular. Get the roof down on that supercar and just enjoy these absolutely spectacular sights. So I said I was going to try and find a windy road in Nevada. Well, this I think is about as good as we're going to get, because trust me, I have driven about 400 or 500 miles in this state, and most of it pretty uneventful. And now you do have to watch out for the wild asses, or the burros, and various things, of which there are a few hiding down there. I was told apparently when people were settling here that they had brought them over to use them as pack animals, and basically a few of them escaped. And as it turns out, this is a perfect environment for them to flourish in. And that's why you get these groups of wild donkeys roaming around the Nevadan countryside. The scale of this place, honestly, just defies belief. I really don't think you guys are going to be able to appreciate it that much on camera. Vegas is an odd place. I mean, this channel's not a travelogue really, but if you're gonna come all the way out here and you're a car guy, there are reasons to do it. I mean, you've got the motorsports park or whatever they call it, so you can drive a car on track, so you can do that. Yesterday I went shooting at a gun range at the Vegas Strip Gun Club, because, you know, America, a Desert Eagle bit me, so you know, that was fun. They're definitely not as easy to shoot in real life as they are in games, so you know, but I'm just trying to ingrain myself into American culture. Rock formations and things around here are quite amazing, but you guys are not here for any sort of geological survey, you're here for cars. So what can I divine about this car driving at 25 miles an hour along a pretty but perfectly smooth road? Well, at these speeds, it is quite civilized. Now we're going a little bit quicker earlier, so I'm gonna have a little bit more time to dissect the interior. It is basic. Don't buy it for the interior. The car does feel brisk enough. I mean, it feels more or less those 350 horses. It's not a light car, it never was that light. And the aerodynamics on the car aren't really as extreme as you think they would be. Now, the new 2018-2019 Nismo, which I'm surprised even exists, but it does. I thought the 370, to be honest, would basically have been axed years ago, but it's soldiering on. Apparently, it's gonna get a big revision fairly soon with possibly a enlarged engine. These people. Anyway, the new Nismo has this little ducktail at the rear, which is very familiar to anyone that likes kind of old school Porsches. And you know what? I'm not a fan. I much prefer this style of Nismo. However, on the Nissan website, they don't advertise the aero as really providing any sort of downforce. They simply claim it is zero lift. And that's significant because that should tell you a lot. This is not really meant to be a hardcore track beast. But around these turns at modest speed, it is very pleasant. One other thing about this car, which is really, really nice, is the fact that you can see the bonnet. Too many cars I get in with big long bonnets, you can't see any of it. Aston Martin Vantage, Jaguar XKR, those sorts of things. But in this one you can. It's got these two fairly pronounced ridges in the middle, which also help you place the car on the road. Very handy for me when I'm sat on the wrong side of the car. Oh, look at this little section here. This is so nice. You just load up. Now, the engine is actually pushed quite far back. Nissan call this a front mid-engine car, and it gives the car a relatively nice balance. So you just turn it in, and it does kind of what you want. Very predictable, very nice. Now, in truth, he's probably got the correct car for doing this road, because he's driving in a convertible Jeep and he can see the sights and sounds. I suspect he's going to be slightly toastier than we are currently, but we're having a good time nonetheless. Now, I have at least got my $15 worth of tarmac out of this place, because Nevada, like a lot of the US, has roads that really aren't up to standard, but this is pitch perfect, very smooth, very nice. Now, quite where this road goes to or what it does, I don't know. I think it just loops back on itself, but I'm glad that I've found it, to be sure. Now, this car with its stock exhaust, whilst it sounds pleasant, it certainly doesn't sound super sporty. It is a very, very popular modification to put an exhaust on these if you don't do anything else, and I can really see why. With just a basic modification, you can really let that V6 breathe, and it just sounds like more of the sports car that it's meant to be. Really, I think this is one of those cars where it suffered because it didn't necessarily do any one thing particularly brilliantly. You know, the engine is good, but not great. The suspension is good, but not great. The styling is good, but not great. The fuel economy, that's not good. But when you're paying $3 a gallon, nobody gives a shit. The interior, again, even when it came out, was basic, but then the price that Nissan asked for this car was not high. So I think people perhaps had slightly unrealistic expectations of what they were going to be getting for their money. Now that is spectacular. Well, maybe Nevada is a no helmet state, because I'm pretty sure that a straw hat is not a DOT approved head protection. Brakes work nicely. Yes, there's a little bit of wobble, but that's just because of the way that this particular car is. And she turns real nice. Lovely car. It's a pleasant experience. There you go. The steering in particular actually is a highlight, because it's nice to have a relatively modern car where the steering isn't just totally and utterly lifeless. I'll confess though, at the moment it's really not the car that I'm concentrating on, rather the absolutely spectacular views out the side. Yeah, she certainly doesn't take off. There's no real big mid-range punch. As far as the tuner scene goes for these, I think there's a relatively decent one. It's not going to be as expensive as the GTR, because that's just not the car's sort of marketplace really. But they do get out there, and it's another one of these cars, you know, it's one of these vehicles where, okay, if there's something, if you want the best handling car in class, that'd be the Porsche. You know, if you want the comfiest car in class, you probably go for something like a Mercedes SLK, or even the BMW Z4 really you'd consider to be a rival to this. And it's a softer, woollier car, but then in the twisties, the Z4 wouldn't be able to keep up with this, because this is much firmer and better damped than even the S-Drive 35i. It's one of those vehicles where when people say, what car do you have? And you say, oh, I got a Nismo 370Z, people go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. You know, I saw one, someone near me must have owned one or something, because there's a town near where I live, and I saw one about 3 times. It was in white, it was a classic Nismo colour, and it was just a great looking car. And, well, really, that's the first thing for me for a sports car. It's got to be a good looking car. I've got to look at it and want it, and that I did. And driving it along here, okay, I am absolutely not pushing this car. A, because I don't fancy getting a ticket from the friendly Nevadan PD, and B, well, the punishment for getting it wrong on this road is really, really harsh. Like, really harsh. Like, you'll be stuck in a really hot place, upside down, and then the guard will come along and say, told you so. So, that'll be bad. However, for this kind of stuff, it works well. And that leaves me with very little to say. It is a nice 2-seater sports car that you can pick up at pretty reasonable money, and out here or in the UK it is still a little bit different, but comes from a major manufacturer, which means you're going to have all the support, both main dealer and aftermarket, that you would get with buying something from a mass-produced manufacturer. And that is what a lot of people want. So what more can I say about the Nismo 370Z? Not much, other than if you fancy trying one, go and try one. It's quite nice. And more importantly, if you're in Vegas or Southern Nevada and you like cars, get out here. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this weird little travelogue car review hybrid mashup type thing. I'll see you all when I get back home. Bye bye.